The Ravens Preview Show with Andy Pollin starts right now.
It wasn't perfect, it wasn't pretty, but it was the Ravens.
Listen to all Ravens broadcasts right here on 6:30 a.m., the ESPN 630 app, or ESPN630DC.com.
And with 1:17 left to play, the Hayes in the barn.
Now, here's Andy Pollin.
No Ravens this weekend. They have just finished up a run that concluded with a blowout victory in Houston, 31-2. Final regular season game a week from Sunday at home against Cleveland. Very simple. They win that. They win the division, which did not seem realistic just a few weeks ago. But they got it done, put themselves in a great spot, and right now, offensively, look awesome, and as evidenced by the fact that they didn't give up a single point on defense in Houston. Defense is in a pretty good spot right now. Kevin Oestreicher has been with us before, joins us from his podcast, Locked on Ravens, and given the way that they're playing and having come through hell in gasoline underwear and winning those 3 games in 11 days to put themselves in this spot, is it fair to say that with 1 game to go in the regular season, even though they won't have home field throughout the playoffs, that they're in a better position now than they were a year ago?
Yeah, I mean, I think that with the situations last year and this year, I almost think it might be a little bit better to kind of have things go about business as usual, going from week 18 to the wild card round and, kind of sticking with that routine where I know there's a lot of talk about the 1 seed. And I think having a bye and resetting is a great thing. I think that's an advantage for whichever team gets it. But I think with a team like the Ravens, they kind of thrive off of momentum. I think it's been the theme of their year this year, where if you give them a momentum play, it's really a bad rest of the day for the opponent. So I feel like with the Ravens, they're a team that they have so much going for them right now. And I think that it's not all about momentum going into the playoffs. I mean, we saw in 2012, the Ravens lost 3 of their final 4 games. They fired their offensive coordinator, made personnel changes, and they still went on to win the Super Bowl. But I do think it's nice to have that, especially when you play 3 games in 11 days and there's all this talk about, how tough that is. And it is extremely tough. And you end up outscoring your opponents in that stretch 100-33. I like where Baltimore's at right now, and I think they might just be peaking at the right time.
Yeah, I feel the same way, and I like what they're doing. I felt that they underutilized Derrick Henry earlier in the season. I know that he's second in carries in the NFL, but just the way he runs, the more you give him the ball, the harder he pounds down on the defense. And 147 yards and a touchdown on Wednesday. I mean, it would seem like, back in the day, 40 years ago, when John Riggins, said, give me the ball, I think you got to do the same thing with Henry now, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you saw against the Texans, they had absolutely no answer. And we've said that a lot this season where, this team has no answer for Derrick Henry. This game against Houston, this was the most no-answer game I've seen from an opposing defense for him. And so what do? You hand the ball to him until the defense can prove that they can stop him. And the Texans did no such thing on Wednesday. And then you saw a game where Derrick Henry runs wild again. And as the year goes on, as the seasons get colder and the weather gets kind of crazy down in the winter, December, January, hopefully February for the Ravens, it's going to be tougher and tougher to tackle a guy like Derrick Henry. And we've seen defenders all year make those business decisions. We've seen Derrick Henry lay the boom on guys, and that just becomes so much more difficult when the weather gets colder. So I think for what the Ravens are doing now, especially with the added emphasis, it feels like it's always a Lamar Jackson effect, regardless of what type of aspect of the game you're talking about. But on these option plays, Lamar has so much gravity where he is taking 1, maybe even 2, 3 defenders, and they have to account for him, which opens up those lanes for Derrick Henry. And I give credit to the offensive line too. They're blocking a lot better than I thought they would this season. There were a lot of question marks, and the Ravens lose 3 starters, but you see guys like Daniel Falele, Patrick McCary, Roger Rosengarten's having a heck of a season this year as a rookie. Those guys are clearing lanes for him. So you have to give the ball to Derrick Henry. I agree. And hopefully, down in the postseason, there won't be a repeat of that AFC Championship game. I mean, you can't give Derrick Henry 6 carries. I don't even think that's in the question.
Yeah, I think they've learned. Well, they didn't have Derrick Henry last year, but yeah, that's been the missing piece. And then also the question about Lamar this time of year, except for last year, has been health. And the way he's looking now, he looks to be as fresh as like September. Is there any concern about anything that he's got going on right now?
No concern at all. And I think I kind of take it back to the offseason conversation about his body transformation, him coming into
light
OTA's minicamp.
Right.
Yeah, kind of going back to kind of what he was earlier in his career. And I know there were a lot of conversations about, is this going to impact his durability, or what does this mean? Because he put on the weight for a couple of seasons. And I said, look, he won an MVP when he was quote unquote skinny Lamar. And then he also won an MVP when he put on the weight. So I think either way he's okay. But the thing with that conversation was it was always about how Lamar felt. And he was very clear about, hey, I'm a guy now that feels like me again, where I think when he put on that weight, he was doing it to kind of protect himself, but he didn't feel as fast, didn't feel as agile. And I think we saw even during the AFC Championship game where there were a couple plays where he couldn't really use his speed to his advantage, and he got caught on plays that usually we'd be talking about Lamar touchdowns or Lamar big runs. So it's been really cool to see him, especially because ever since his rookie season, where his rookie year, he was taking some unnecessary hits, but ever since then, he's been very conscious of protecting his body, and there was no concern of the durability part for me for Lamar. It was just a matter of injuries happen in the NFL. It's just everybody goes through it. Every player goes through it. But for Lamar, I mean, he told us he was right. He feels like himself again. You can clearly see on the field he feels comfortable out there, roaming out in the pocket, rushing, throwing. He's doing everything right now, and it's incredible to see what he's doing.
Talking to Kevin Oestreicher, does Locked on Ravens podcast, and we've covered the offense now. The defense, and it seems like less than a month and a half ago that the discussion was, Jesus, what has happened? The defense of Ray Lewis and Ed Reed has turned into a sieve. And then, boom, they've been tremendous lately. Didn't give up a point on defense yesterday. Maybe the two Kyles have had a big role in that. Kyle Van Noy, 10.5 sacks, guy they called off the couch, and Kyle Hamilton, who's now in the right position. I mean, is it more than that? Why has this defense stepped up so much in the last few weeks?
Yeah, I definitely start with the two Kyles. I mean, you have a guy in Kyle Van Noy, $3.6 million cap hit. You know, the Ravens rewarded him with an extension after his season last year, and he clearly is still playing with a chip on his shoulder. I know it's been kind of made that he's been very clear that, hey, I was on my couch last year. You know, nobody wanted me. And then the Ravens gave him an opportunity, and he's performing. And that's kind of what the Ravens are known for a little bit, is finding these veterans that a lot of people have question marks about, or there's a wonder of if their career is really done, and then they just go out there and they ball out. And Kyle Van Noy's doing that. And yeah, I think a big part of it, maybe the biggest part, is Kyle Hamilton moving back into a different role, more traditional safety on that back end, where we know he can do everything. I mean, you can put him in any position and he'll thrive and it'll help. But I think the big thing that I kind of take away from that is Roquan Smith talked about it, and he said that it just simplifies everything, where he was making calls for the back end, he was making calls for the front, and putting Kyle Hamilton back there is kind of taking stuff off of his plate. And that, by proxy, has made Roquan a better player this season, where he was struggling a bit earlier. And then you see guys like Darius Washington, who I can't say enough good things about, filling in for Marcus Williams, has had 2 game-changing plays in 2 weeks. And I feel like the Ravens would have won both those games without those plays, but you wonder, it's like the momentum shifts when Darius makes those plays, because in the Pittsburgh game, Pittsburgh goes up 14-7. In the Texans game, the Texans are, I think, a point away from tying it, or maybe they do if they go for the 2-point conversion after that safety. So it's about guys stepping up in hard personnel decisions they've made, like benching a guy you're paying $70 million to, or a third-round, second-year player that you have high hopes for and high expectations for coming into the season. It's not really working out. And then you say, okay, we're going to go linebacker by committee here. Malik Harrison, Chris Board, they've played really well. So they've had guys step up left and right this season. Part of the calling card for Baltimore's defense last year was guys were stepping in when the Ravens had some injuries, depth pieces, third stringers, fourth stringers. That's happening again this season, only they're being tasked with bigger roles and guys are healthy. It's just a matter of Baltimore making those tough decisions, and it's paid off for them.
No question. All right. This is probably going to be a discussion more outside of Baltimore than in it. But if Lamar wins his third MVP, and he took a big step forward towards that on Christmas, the narrative is going to be if they don't get to the Super Bowl, it's a yeah, but. Yeah, he's never gotten them there. Is there a feel there that has to be part of this equation this year, not just the third MVP, but if he's really going to reach that elite status, they got to get past Kansas City and get to the Super Bowl?
Yeah, I think so. And I think for Lamar Jackson, he's a player that he's held to such a high standard, and I think all these quarterbacks should be, right? I mean, obviously guys like Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, et cetera, but Lamar, he's one of one. He's a special talent, and with that does come the high expectation of when you're that good and when you have that much talent, the expectation is, hey, you probably want to go out there and win a couple Super Bowls to take advantage of that talent. So I feel like a Super Bowl's a big part of it because regular season is great. MVPs are awesome. And Lamar's said kind of the same thing here where it is about postseason success. It is about a Super Bowl where that's all Lamar wants. I mean, we know he's so competitive. We know he wants to win, and not even just for him. I mean, he wants to win for his teammates, for his coaches, for the city of Baltimore. Obviously, he's so competitive as a player and as a person that it'll obviously bring him a ton of joy as well. But when you talk about the regular season, we know the Ravens are a good regular season team. We know that they go out there and win, in a minimum like 9 or 10 games a season in the regular season. But in the postseason, that's what matters because I take it back to last season where that regular season was really fun when we were in it. I mean, they were blowing out teams by 30 seemingly every other week, and they were making statements every week. Lamar was throwing Jackson 5s left and right, but we don't really talk about that anymore because of how disappointing the postseason run was and how disappointing the AFC Championship game was and the fact that they didn't achieve that goal. So for Lamar to truly reach that elite status, I do agree that he needs to win a Super Bowl, and obviously getting there is the start, getting past Kansas City, and with the way the playoffs are shaping up, there is a possibility that they have to go through Pittsburgh, Buffalo, and Kansas City to get there, which is a heck of a pass, but I do think advantage I would say the Ravens have this year over last year's team is I think they've faced more adversity and they're more battle tested this year, where it was blowouts every single week last year. They didn't really have to sweat through games for the most part. This year they've had to come back in wins. They've had to, really question themselves. They've lost games. They've gone down 0-2 to start the year. I think come playoff time that will benefit them and honestly help them when it comes to getting to where they want to go.
Very good. Locked On Ravens podcast. Is that a weekly, daily? How often are you on?
Yeah, we're daily. We're 5 days a week, and then we do bonus content to go live after Ravens games. There's been a lot to talk about this year, and hopefully a lot more with a hopefully deep playoff run for Baltimore.
Very good. Hey, thanks, Kevin. Good to talk to you.
Appreciate you. Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
Kevin Oestreicher, Locked On Ravens podcast. As the Ravens now have the weekend off, they finish up with Cleveland at home a week from Sunday. What John Harbaugh said after the win the other night in Houston and what Bart Scott and Adam Schefter say about Lamar in the MVP race. It's Ravens Preview on ESPN 630.
Ravens on 3, 1, 2, 3.
This is the Ravens Preview Show presented by Verizon. Here's Andy Pollin.
No Ravens this week. They finished up 3 games in 11 days, winning all 3 of them convincingly, topping it off with a win in Houston on Christmas Day, 31-2. And this is how Coach John Harbaugh greeted the media after the victory.
Merry Christmas. Great win. Proud of our guys. These guys took this 3 games in 11 days and smashed it, obliterated, and tore it up and made it into a bunch of smithereens laying around everywhere. I'm proud of the guys, how they did it. They did a great job. All right, what questions you have?
I was going to ask big picture, John, just to come out of this stretch. You were 2 back in the AFC North, and to come out of this now a game up with a chance to clinch it on your home field and, to win all these games by double digits. What does that kind of say about the group as a whole?
It says so much, and it says we're not done yet because it's been done, and the next thing is going to be the next game. We need to be 1-0 to win the AFC North, and that'll be our focus. After we get some rest, we'll have rest until we'll get the guys out. We'll bring them back on Monday, and we'll get started for the Browns, which is always a very tough team, tough opponent, division game. But it will be for the AFC North crown, and we're going to need to be locked in for that. But the fact that they did it in this short stretch, I think our team probably handled it the best. Arguably, I don't know. I guess the Chiefs did a good job too, so there you go. Got to give them credit, give credit where credit's due. But I'm proud of our guys, man. I'm really proud of our guys for what they accomplished. Our coaches, our strength conditioning coaches, our nutritionist, our trainer, our performance coach.
John, did you come into this game thinking you were going to be able to control the game by running the ball?
We thought we had a chance. Yeah, we thought we had a chance to run the ball. It's a real tough defense. They play super hard. Their DBs show up. They play downhill. I didn't know if we anticipated coming out of the gate so quickly running the ball well, but I was really happy we did. I was happy with the guys.
What can you say about Lamar's performance?
And what could you say that would maybe parallel what he did, right? I mean, it's just another phenomenal performance. I think he set the all-time NFL record for rushing yards in the National Football League, pro football. That kind of speaks for itself. It's just kind of what he does every week. Made some plays on the run. These guys, we had some tight coverage. They covered us well, but he was able to extend those plays and make those big plays in the passing game, which is kind of what he does a lot of times, and it was great to see.
Yeah, 4 carries, 87 yards. He goes past Michael Vick for most yards rushing by a quarterback. Vick played into his 30s. He did miss 2 key years when he was in prison, but Lamar's, 28? He's going to obliterate that rushing record for quarterbacks. As for MVP, most of the discussion after the game and into yesterday morning was, oh, boy, Josh Allen, everybody who had him penciled in for MVP, looks like it might be Lamar. This was Bart Scott and Adam Schefter on ESPN.
I mean, you can call me a homer for being a former Raven, but, the facts don't lie. Now you can talk about the numbers don't lie. You talk about, what Lamar Jackson's been able to do. We heard everything that Hawk said, but also the fact that he plays in one of the toughest divisions in all of football. Listen, he's not a guy that's going to try and pad his stats or going to try and go for an MVP because he understands he has bigger things in his vision. He doesn't care about the MVP. He's talked openly. He could have played in the fourth quarter if he wanted to pad his stats to try and help his resume out, but he's more concerned about winning the team goal, not individual goals. For everything that people have always said, that Lamar Jackson is only a guy that's an athlete playing quarterback. We're seeing a guy that's slicing defenses up, and he has one of the most complex running defenses and all the different ball handling that he has to do on that side that I don't think he gets enough credit for. But he's playing at an MVP level again, even better than what he did last year.
Yeah, he's been consistent throughout his career. He doesn't care about the awards. He cares about winning that Super Bowl. Adam, what do you got?
Well, I was going to say that he's won the MVP twice before.
Yep.
And the way he's playing right now with the numbers he's produced are better than what happened when he won MVP in 2 previous years. But to your point, Dan, I'm sure he doesn't care about a third MVP as much as he does making a deep playoff run to New Orleans that would dethrone the Chiefs and prevent that three-peat from happening.
Well, as we just talked to Kevin Oestreicher, they may have to go through the gauntlet to get there. They may have to beat the Steelers, the Chiefs, and also the Buffalo Bills to do that. The way things are shaping up now, they beat Cleveland. They'll be favored to do that. Cleveland's got a game this week at home against Miami, but they have to come to Baltimore for the final game, and I would imagine the Ravens are going to be 7.5-point favorites, something like that. I believe they win that game. That means 12 wins for a team that started off 0-2. So, that says a lot about how this team has got it going at the right time. And the way things shape up at the moment, things could change over the last 2 weeks because most teams now have 2 games left to go. But Denver and the Chargers are both 9-6. I would expect one of those teams to come to Baltimore for the wild card game. I guess there would be a slight chance that they would have to play Pittsburgh again. And then, Buffalo would loom. Buffalo has clinched the division in the AFC East. They didn't really get any competition there, 12-3 with Miami at 7-8. And then Kansas City, it's going to go the championship game, unless they get knocked off. Kansas City is going to host the championship game yet again. I mean, it's just remarkable year after year after year. I think this is 7 straight years that they won the division. They had to play on the road last year in Baltimore in the championship game, but it's going to be brutally cold, and that the Chiefs are battle-tested, and as much carping has been done about, all they do is barely eke out games. Well, they changed things against the Steelers on Christmas Day, didn't they? And now they have an opportunity to rest up with a week and then a game that doesn't mean anything at the end of the season. They're going to be a tough out. But playoffs are going to be great, especially in the AFC. And Ravens, one way or another, I think are going to be a factor. I want to thank Kevin Oestreicher from Locked On Ravens for joining us today, Isaac Kuhn-Harris for running the show. And to all of you who listen, have a great weekend, and I'll see you back here Monday morning at 9 a.m.